Okay, so I'm here to explain today's assignment. We watched Wall-E in class today and yesterday. If you haven't seen it, you really should watch it. It's so wonderful. It's a great movie. So if you have seen Wall-E and you remember it and you know what it's about, maybe refresh your memory. If you weren't able to watch it yesterday, go watch a couple of YouTube clips. I've included a couple of particularly useful YouTube clips linked in this little bar right here, just if you need a refresher. So if you are looking at Wall-E, then you will be doing these several pages, and I will walk you through those now. So today we're talking about allegory, and allegory, as our little definition says right here, is a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one. So we all know the story of the tortoise and the hare, right? The hare is running the race, and then he lays down and he takes a nap, and he's like, no one can pass me, I'm so fast. But meanwhile, the tortoise is just like poking along one little step at a time. And because the rabbit winds up laying down because he got super tired from running so fast, the tortoise winds up winning the race. And the moral that we have is slow and steady wins the race, right? Yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at with allegory. But often with allegory, things are a little bit more specific, right? That's just a moral, right? Most stories have morals. Allegories often try to tell us things about like different people and actors and situations in our real world, and they do so through the metaphor of story. So Wall-E has a lot of metaphors for our real world, and that's what our exercise today is going to look at. So we have our instruction here. The 2008 film Wall-E is an environmental allegory and is meant to make a statement to the audience about not only, I need to erase this part, I forgot about this, about not only the importance of protecting the environment, but about who is ultimately responsible for the greatest harms done to the environment. So Wall-E is trying to tell us like, who in our world is responsible for the things happening to our planet, and what is our responsibility to our planet, and what is these various actors' responsibility. So the way we're going to look through that is we're going to look at three characters in Wall-E in particular, and the ways in which they could be considered the antagonists, and the ways in which they are allegories for types of people in our world. So first, we're going to start with just the text. Part one, write a justification of how each of these characters could be regarded as the antagonist. That's the person standing between the protagonist and the ultimate good of the story, the ultimate, goal of where the story is trying to get us to. Could be regarded as the antagonist in the environmental allegory of Wall-E. In each justification, offer at least one counter-argument that considers why the character might not be the antagonist. So we have the by and large president, Shelby Forthright. That name cracks me up. Then we have the passengers of the axiom. So it's not just this one character. It's like all of the passengers. And then there's Otto. How could these characters be considered sort of like the villain or the problem in Wall-E, especially with regards to the environmental issues of the movie? I'll do an example with by and large President Shelby Forthright. So he could be considered the antagonist because he is the president of By and Large, and By and Large is the corporation that put all that trash on the planet, right? And they're the ones who sent everyone to space, decided to give up on the planet, and they're the ones who said that autopilot should take over and not allow people to come back to Earth, and never accept accountability for their actions with regards to the planet. So like all of that, like, kind of rests at his feet. That's like pretty serious. However, if we want to do a counter argument for reasons why maybe he's not like the ultimate villain, he's like barely in the movie, right? We see a lot more of the Axiom passengers, a lot more of Otto. We're probably more scared of Otto. This guy's like, he seems friendly. You don't necessarily have to buy your counter argument, but just like give me a counter argument, because I think all of these characters try to have shades and dimensions. So that's the answer. Those are the answers you'll have in these sections. Then we scroll down, we get to part two. Allegories usually contain characters or images that are meant to represent figures from the real world. What or who, in your opinion, could these three characters represent from the real world? So, when we are watching the Axiom Passengers, who are we supposed to be thinking of in the real world? They are kind of lazy. They are stuck in front of their screens. They're ultimately, it seems like, pretty good people. They're just so immersed and distracted in their phones and in the various entertainments around them that they don't really realize what's going on and don't seem to acknowledge the ways in which they've given up their responsibility. Who does that remind us of in our world, our universe? What is Wally trying to tell us about that? So you want to answer that question for all three of these. Then we get to part 3. This is where we really bring the real world into it. So we have 3 excerpts of articles. Let me read the instructions. Each of the following excerpts is from an article related to pollution in the modern world. Identify which of the 3 possible antagonists the excerpts best represent, and explain what the character has in common with the figures mentioned in each excerpt. So you will read these 3. One of them will remind you the most of Otto. One of them will remind you the most of the passengers. One of them will remind you the most of the by and large president. You want to identify who has the most in common with which of these articles, and then you want to explain to me what they have in common. How we see the connection that the movie is trying to draw between these real life issues and these characters, right? So just building these bridges from the movie to the real world, because that's what the movie's trying to do. And so we want to be good readers of that. We want to know what they're trying to tell us. And then we get to the final piece, which is reading it just back and forth, real plain. What does the movie say? And then what is the movie implying about the real world by using allegory? So what is the primary threat to the environment in the movie WALL-E? All of this is in the movie. So you'll want to say in the movie or in WALL-E, the greatest threat to the environment is blah, blah, blah. And then that thing, whatever your answer is going to be an allegory for the real world issue. So if you say that the greatest threat is corporations or something, if you say the greatest threat is corporations, or the by and large president, right? Then you don't want to say in the real world that the allegory is the greatest threat is everyday people not accepting responsibility, because you want these to match, because you want to say if WALL-E says that it's the by and large president, then here the answer is going to be companies and politicians and people in our world who are like the by and large president, right? So I want to see parallels here. All of this should go back and forth. And then finally, if you have not seen WALL-E, I have this assignment for you. So it's the same articles from the 3rd piece of this worksheet. Instructions. Read the following article excerpts. Determine who or what each excerpt lays the blame for environmental issues on, and why the excerpt feels they are responsible. Then, in a developed response, determine what each party's responsibility is in solving climate crisis. Who is the most responsible? Who can do the most and least good? So here, you might not be able to consider allegory, but you can consider, you can evaluate these arguments, right? You can say, first of all, what is each of these arguing is causing climate crisis in a certain degree? And then you can say, which of these do we need to take most seriously? And what do those parties need to do? And how can they amend their ways, amend their evil doings or whatever? Give good developed responses for this, because it is admittedly less work, but we have several questions in here that I would love for you to pull apart, and you're still getting these themes of sort of environmentalism, which are related to our issue of famine, right? Our food supply and people's ability to live and thrive on this planet is directly related to how we treat the planet. So this is an important part of our famine unit, and you can participate in those themes just as much as someone who did see WALL-E. All right. Thank you guys. Sorry, a little bit long, but I hope this helps. And I look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow. Bye.